And so, Neha, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. So I joined GEP when I was graduating from undergrad and had joined as a strategy consultant in Accenture in New York City. And that is where I met another individual who, after a few months, called me and said his wife, and another person from business school were starting a company. So they invited me to meet them and kind of learn more about what they were doing, their business plan. It happened to be very close to where I grew up. So I figured at the very young age of, I think I was 21 back then, I thought, what's the harm in going to kind of check out what they're doing? In the worst case, I would have just been able to go visit my parents. In the best case, there's some new opportunity. So I did that in that fateful meeting and met these three individuals, and then decided to finish the project that I was working on at Accenture and join them. And that's what I did now over 20 years ago. And that's kind of the history of how I joined and became part of the co-founding team at GEP. So it's been a very amazing ride, amazing journey, and very happy to see the company's growth, its impact on its customers, on employees, the world in a bigger way. And I'm very privileged and glad to be a part of it. Along that professional journey, I also spent a lot of time with my family, with my husband, 3 young children, 2 boys and a girl, ages 4 through 10, and and then do a lot of things outside of GEP. I'm very involved in an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which I just have gotten involved with. I'm involved in some mentorship of some younger entrepreneurs. I'm involved in some philanthropic and nonprofit activities in child trafficking and slavery, and domestic violence, and a few other areas. So I try to keep myself busy and just focused on what I think are meaningful and important things, and trying to make whatever small impact I can in a positive way.
Oh, that's really incredible, too.
Thank you.
But so you mentioned that you took that big risk at such a young age. Why do you think that is so important for this new generation of supply chain professionals to do that?
Yeah, I think it's always important, whether you're in supply chain or in really any field. I think it's very important to kind of follow your intuition, follow your gut, work with people that you respect, you trust, you like. So the funny thing is, when I went to see these individuals, I really didn't know any of them. They were all older than me by 10 to 15 plus years. But what I did see in them, they were all of Indian origin. Of course, I was born and raised in New Jersey. They all came from India as immigrants in the 90s. But what I did see is there's kind of a shared experience. They probably reminded me of what my parents would have been years earlier. And so I think that ability to kind of, immediately understand each other, have that shared experience, was very important. And what I've learned through that is that is why kind of this emphasis on diversity and inclusion within companies, it's a big emphasis, certainly within GEP, and we're trying to do a much better job than we have. But now I realize, just through that experience I had, how important it is to have people that you can kind of you can empathize with, you can understand their background. And that's why it's very important in a company like GEP, or any company or any function, supply chain or otherwise. It's really important to have those people who, either as your peers, your leaders, who are women, who are people of color, who are LGBTQ. It's really important to have that representation, to make everyone feel included, to have that diversity, and really to bring out the best talent in everyone, to be able to attract them, retain them, and grow really anybody, whatever their background is.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
But I just want to echo your statement because diversity is really important, and that is a big theme that I've gotten with these interviews so far. So I'm sure our viewers are like, please stop talking about this. But we have to continue to talk about it because when someone my age or someone younger sees someone like them in an upper management position, it gives them hope. So I think that representation like really is important. And it's not just in movies or on TV. It's everywhere. You need it in every single industry.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
There's many times where as we were growing GEP, of course, our firm is focused on supply chain, procurement. There would be many meetings that I would attend where I certainly looked much younger than anyone in the room. I was probably the only woman in many. It even happens today. It happens much less than before, but I could say that there were many of those experiences, which, again, as my younger self, there was always this feeling of, do I belong here? Am I in over my head? That kind of thing. But because I was, I think, capable, I was confident in my skill set, in my knowledge of what I was speaking on, whether it's a specific topic on supply chain, how to save that company a significant amount of money, how they could become more efficient using our experience, using our digital platforms. I had that confidence, and that allowed me to overcome some of those insecurities. But it's really important, I think, again, having people who you can relate to in the audience, people in the meeting. It's really important, I think, to bring out the best of people. You certainly need that, your kind of own confidence and self-confidence, but it just helps. It helps to have the right environment. And so that's why I think it's so important in this entire function that we, again, attract more women, just a more diverse set of people across the board.
Mm. So you started at GEP when you were like 21 or 22?
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
How
I did. Mm-hmm.
can you find the courage to speak up at such a young age and like really cement your place within the business?
It came from, again, there were many times, again, I would say the first couple of years where we were a much smaller firm back then. Now we have over 5,000 people and close to 25 global offices. So it's a different scale, but back then it was just a handful of people. And so I think because we were small, even though I was young, I always felt that I had an opportunity to speak up. The people that I worked with, again, they were older than me, certainly had more experience than I did. But I think they showed a respect of opinions, new thoughts, and I certainly did the same for anybody that I worked with as well. So I think that mutual respect was very important to get that comfort. And again, I think for me personally, I've always been kind of this type A, overachieving sort of personality. And of course that doesn't come without insecurity and fear, but because since then my life was all about, okay, do something, achieve, and move on to the next thing. I think because I had that experience that allowed me to kind of have some sense, I wouldn't say fully without insecurity, but certainly some sense that I do have capability. I can learn quickly. I can adapt, and I can add value to a customer who is, much bigger than GEP, and especially back then, or is, 30 years older than me. I still have something I can offer. So it was this constant kind of reminding myself that it doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter that I'm much younger. Even today, I'm 43 years old, but many people still think I'm very young. I'm glad. I hope that's the case. But I think, but still, I believe that GEP, we had something to offer, And that's what I really focused on. And that's what gave me the confidence to speak up, to do whatever it was in the meeting. And now in life, you know, when we see a lot of things going on in the world that shouldn't be, it also gives me the confidence that, you know, it's you have to do the right thing, even sometimes when it's at your own personal sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. My editor always tells me that you're not going to get anywhere unless you speak up. And I think that's
Yes.
like a really good piece of advice that I've
Yes,
gotten, because young girls have always been told just to like sit back and be quiet. And that's probably like the worst thing that we've been
yes,
told.
absolutely. Very true.
And so, what attributes do you think a successful supply chain leader has?
So, you know, I think I'll talk more specifically about leadership first, and then talk a little bit about supply chain. So as a leader, I think, you know, first and foremost is this desire, very innate, ingrained desire to serve others, servant leadership. You know, and the funny thing is I've heard many, you know, some people really against this concept of servant leadership, others who are completely for it. You know, I do believe that a good leader, number one, has to think about who they're leading, as much or even more than themselves. That's something that I think is really fundamental.
Right.
They have to, I think a great leader is one who doesn't just speak very well and is very articulate and charismatic, but one who actually does. So I have a very strong bias towards kind of leaders who act, who serve as an example, who don't just kind of say, you know, you should do this or you should do that, but they act it, you know, every way, and how they, their own skill set and capability, how they behave. So they truly are someone that can be emulated, someone who can inspire others. That's very important. Somebody who has a clear vision for the future, as well as really strong capability on how to get there. So vision and strategy is super important, but then that ability to kind of really get things done and execute, if not flawlessly, but really well, with sincerity and with strong focus on sound execution. So those are some principles of leadership, general leadership, that I think are very important. There's probably many others that I'm not covering, but some of the key ones that come to mind. And then all of those are attributable in the supply chain space, where you need all of those kind of leadership attributes. And then specifically in supply chain, it comes down to, you know, supply chain is very much, you know, it's about so many stakeholders. You have your suppliers and those in your value chain, your logistics and warehousing and so forth. You have your customers, of course. You have all of the internal stakeholders, your business partners and so forth. So to be successful in a supply chain function and a supply chain leadership role, you have to be pretty much a great person when it comes to kind of emotional intelligence, understanding and empathizing with different perspectives in the business, understanding human beings and what drives them and their egos. And then finally, being able to kind of sell to, understand all of those different stakeholders to align towards the end goal. In addition, in supply chain, it requires a lot of course, knowledge of the business and the domain that you're working in, your industry, your business, but also the supply chain function overall and how it connects, how the customers all the way back to your suppliers, your contract manufacturers, how it connects. Understanding data and being able to analyze that is very important. And then finally, I think somebody who's very forward-looking and looking towards the future. So the whole supply chain function is getting disrupted. It's getting digitized, automated in every respect. GEP is one company doing that, but there's numerous areas across the supply chain that are getting digitized and automated. So it requires leadership of someone who's forward-looking, who understands and is accepting of those changes, embraces that and says, well, how can I be a leader instead of me being told what's going to come, how can I anticipate, understand the future, and make the right investments, make those decisions, even when things are not entirely certain, entirely clear. How do I make those right investments so that I'm ahead of the curve and really can think about, what are those opportunities for the supply chain of the future, which of course, digitization, AI, machine learning, every buzzword you can think of is part of the future of supply chain. So somebody who understands it, embraces it, and gets the right expertise, makes the right investments in those areas is required.
Right. And if 2020 has showed us up anything, is that we need forward thinkers, because anything can be thrown at us.
Exactly. I think the agility, of course, like you said, COVID-19 showed us that, anything can happen. Things that we call unprecedented is now like, I use that word like way too much, and every single day, every single hour. But the point is, anything can happen at any time, and supply chain is pretty much at the center of it. And it requires, swift thinking, agility, like really nowhere else. And it requires this ability to think through and to also mitigate, think about, how do I quickly adapt my supply chain? How do I quickly adapt my geographies and my supply base? How do I diversify my supply base? How do I mitigate risk? All of these things are absolutely required for today's supply chain professional.
Right, because the supply chain isn't going to break. It's too strong of an industry to fully break. It might bend, but then we have leaders such as yourself that are able to turn it around and make it successful again.
Yes, yeah. This is a new opportunity. The supply chain as a function is more critical than ever. So that is for sure. That's what COVID-19 has shown us, and not only COVID-19, so many things, very unfortunate and tragic things that are happening in the world, shows us that our ability to kind of adapt and change and maneuver has become such an important life skill, something we have to teach our children, to be honest. Those 21st century life skills, this is certainly one of them.
Right.
So the supply chain will be is at the crux of it, and our ability to think through what we can do to adapt and mitigate risk is very, very important.
And then, what is it like being a woman in an industry that is traditionally dominated by men?
So as I said, Mackenna, I think it's been, I think, an experience where there's been many times where you feel a little bit like an outsider. It doesn't happen as much, as I said. Nowadays we see a lot of leaders in the supply chain function, in the procurement function, who are tremendous women leaders, tremendous leaders overall. But I would say, especially early on, and even now, there are certain industries where you see the room is dominated by men. The decision making on investments is dominated by men. And so for me, before, what used to be intimidating is now an opportunity. It's an opportunity to change thinking, change perspective, give new ideas. And so, for me, it's exciting in many respects that it is an opportunity for me and others to really, do things very differently. I think, as I said, the whole function is getting disrupted. It's getting digitized. These opportunities to, when like old systems, old ways of thinking, old technologies are now kind of one by one, we're realizing we can turn it upside down. And I think it's exciting to be able to bring those ideas, but also be a woman to say, with confidence that this is what you should be thinking about, what you should be doing, what our experience shows. And for people, both men and women, to kind of listen, to absorb, and to make changes based on your advice, your recommendations, your thought leadership. So it's exciting. I don't think, again, it's one where, as we talked about earlier, the entire business world, supply chain function is no different. needs to become more diverse, more inclusive, and that is the way that it will allow for really the best talent, brightest ideas, best execution to come to fruition, and it's just good business. And so we hope that that's the way of the future for the entire business community, certainly of which supply chain is a part.
Well, I got chills while you were talking, but that intimidating into an opportunity that is, just get that stamped on my forehead, I guess, because that is so good to hear. Why do you think more women should be involved in the industry, and how can we recruit and retain more talented women?
Sure. So again, why I think more women should be involved is twofold. One, for the women themselves, is a great opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, the function is the core of a sound business operation for a huge, $500 billion company, or for a small, medium-sized business. It's absolutely crucial to the functioning and well-run operations of a company. So I think for the women out there, it's a great opportunity. It's a field that's evolving, changing, getting disrupted, tons of digitization, automation. So it's a great opportunity for women to start their careers, grow their careers, and really make an impact on the business. So I think from that perspective, it's a wonderful opportunity for the potential candidates, women candidates, people who are looking for either their first job out of school or changing positions, changing fields. It's a great opportunity. And for the business itself, for the organizations itself, as I said, I guess numerous times now, getting the best people is the most important thing. If you want to have a great company, if you want to have a great function, you need the best talent. And the best talent comes in the form of everyone. It comes in the form of women, certainly, of men, of people with different ethnicities, nationalities, background, religions, orientation, everything. So to make it as accessible as possible, as open as possible, is the right thing. It's just good business. And that's my experience. That's what we're certainly trying to do at GEP. We have a long way to go, but we're trying. And I think every company should do their hardest work in this space to bring the best talent and more women talent. Absolutely.
And then what is some advice that you would give to younger girls that are joining the industry?
I think this is my advice to all young girls, young women, my daughter, who's only 4. But I tell them that, number one is to believe in yourself. You have everything within you. You have it all. You can do anything. You should do anything. There's no person, man or woman, who should stop you from achieving all of your potential, which is enormous, which is just completely enormous. There's no limit to the potential of any young woman or young individual in general. So that's the number one thing, is believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. I think the other thing is fear. There was a movie somebody quoted that they said, danger is real, but fear is a choice. And that really stuck with me because I think it was a Brene Brown podcast I was listening to. She heard it in some movie. And I think that, that's something I've learned, is that the fearlessness, it's really important to be fearless. And we all have anxieties. We all have so many things that hold us back. I admit, people will say, oh, you're the president or co-founder of a company, you've done this, you've done that. Every day I have fears. I have fears for my children. I have fears of COVID-19. I have fears of so many different things. I have fears of going into a meeting, even now, 20 plus years later, on a topic that I know like the back of my hand, but I still feel that anxiety once in a while. I feel something. And I'm like, what I always remind myself, it's fear is a choice. And our ability to be fearless is what's going to allow us to achieve each individual as our full potential, and as a group of women, our full potential, as a society, our full potential. So that fearlessness is what I would say to all young professionals, young women out there. Be fearless. There's a book called Brave, Not Perfect. There's so many different themes around this, that our ability to be fearless, to be brave, to be courageous, sometimes on little things, sometimes on very massive scale, is what's going to allow us to fulfill our potential. It's going to allow us to change the world. And so that's what I would recommend to everyone.
Oh, oh, you should write a book.
Not quite there yet, but hopefully, maybe one day in the future.
I feel so inspired. But Neha, I know that you are a very busy lady, so I just have one last question for you. And
Sure.
what does it mean to be named as one of SCCE's first top women in supply chain?
I'm very appreciative, grateful, thankful. I think it's an absolute honor to be named this and given this award. But more importantly, I think what it means is that progress is being made, and there's a recognition that women have a very important impact and role to play in the supply chain. You know, I feel like I'm a person that was picked, and I'm again very grateful and appreciative. But there are so many great professionals out there who are making an impact every day, and I'm just one representation of the people that are doing really great things out there. We see the supply chain in PPE and things that are affecting people's like daily lives, daily health, life or death situations. And I just feel I'm just kind of a representation of what supply chain, how important supply chain is, and all of the fearless women and men who are making a tremendous impact on very, very important issues in the supply chain. So I'm proud to be that representation. I'm very appreciative to be picked. But there's so many great people out there, and I think they all deserve an award and a standing ovation as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Neha. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me. And it was great being
Absolutely.
able to speak with you as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the award and the opportunity.
Thanks.